Help us hit our first 1,000 subscribers. Your support drives us to create even more wonderful stories. Thanks for being part of our journey. Jackson was never the type to believe in soulmates. A quiet, grounded guy who spent most of his time coding, gaming, or hanging out with a small circle of close friends. He had always assumed love would be something slow and logical, not lightning striking in the middle of a rainy Tuesday. But everything changed when he met Riley. They first crossed paths at a mutual friend's game night. Riley showed up late, laughing loudly, dressed in bright scrubs after a long shift at the hospital. Jackson was instantly captivated. She had this magnetic energy. Like she didn't just enter the room. She owned it. She sat next to him during a round of Cards Against Humanity and kept nudging his arm with every joke. Her laughter was contagious. And even though they barely won any rounds, it was the most fun Jackson had had in months. After the party, she added him on Instagram, and they started chatting non-stop. Within a week, they had their first date, burgers and milkshakes at a retro diner. Riley talked about her crazier stories, and Jackson, for the first time, felt like someone actually saw him, not just as the quiet tech guy, but as a man worth knowing. From that moment on, they were inseparable. They spent weekends exploring the city, cooking Pinterest recipes together, and building a shared Spotify playlist filled with songs that made Riley dance around the apartment in her socks. Jackson had never fallen this fast or this hard. Riley made life feel like a romantic indie film. All sunlight, stolen kisses, and late-night whispers. 6 months in, they moved into a cozy one-bedroom together. Riley picked the curtains, Jackson mounted the TV, and they named their new ficus plant Steve. It felt like the beginning of forever. Looking back, Jackson would always wonder, was it really perfect? Or was it just the perfect illusion? Because love like that, the kind that hits fast and feels too good to be true, sometimes is. For the first few months after their wedding, life between Jackson and Riley was like a dream. Quiet Sunday mornings, shared cups of coffee, spontaneous late-night drives with the windows down and music blasting. Jackson believed he had found not just a wife, but a best friend. She laughed at his dumb jokes, sent him sweet texts during the day, and always waited up for him, even if he came home late from work. But slowly, something began to shift. Not loud or sudden, just subtly wrong. Riley still smiled, but it didn't always reach her eyes. She still texted, but the messages were shorter now, more okay. And sure, fewer heart emojis, and Miss US Jackson noticed she started keeping her phone on silent. And when it buzzed, she'd glance at it and flip it over quickly, face down. Once, he reached for it absent-mindedly when it rang while she was in the kitchen, and she practically flew across the room to grab it from his hand. She laughed it off, said it was just her mom, but his gut twisted. Something about the way she said it felt rehearsed. He told himself not to be paranoid. Riley had always been private, even before they married. He didn't want to become that kind of husband, the jealous, possessive type, but the distance between them grew like fog. He'd wake up in the middle of the night and find her not in bed, but sitting on the couch with her phone glowing in her hands. She claimed she couldn't sleep, but she never seemed tired the next day. Jackson tried harder. He booked them a weekend getaway at a cabin in the woods. No signal, no distractions. Riley smiled and said it sounded wonderful. But 2 days before the trip, she suddenly had to cancel. Emergency work meeting, she said, eyes darting away. Jackson offered to go without her, but something told him she never intended to come. That weekend, sitting alone by the fireplace, Jackson stared at their wedding photo on his phone. Her arms around his neck, eyes closed, kissing his cheek, and wondered when that version of her disappeared. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon when Jackson first heard the name Liam. He had come home early from work, a surprise for Riley, who always said she missed having lunch together. As he stepped into the living room, he heard her voice from the kitchen. She was on the phone, laughing softly, her voice lighter than it had been in weeks. "I swear, Liam, you're ridiculous," she said with a giggle. "No, I'm not blushing. Shut up." Jackson froze in the hallway. He had never heard her use that tone with anyone but him. The way she said Liam, Casual, familiar, almost flirtatious. Made his stomach churn when she noticed him standing there. Her smile vanished instantly. "Oh, hey babe," she said too quickly, as if trying to act normal. "That was just Haley from work. You remember her, right?" But Jackson didn't remember a Haley. Riley never mentioned a friend by that name. Still, he didn't push it. He smiled, kissed her on the cheek, and tried to ignore the tightening in his chest. But the name Liam lodged itself into his brain like a splinter. That night, while Riley was in the shower, he checked her call logs. The most frequent number on her recent list wasn't labeled, just a string of digits, but it was there every single day, often more than once. The next morning, Jackson pretended to sleep as Riley got ready. She slipped out of bed, took her phone off the charger, and tiptoed into the living room. A minute later, he heard her voice again, soft, affectionate. He got up silently and peeked down the hallway. There she was, curled on the couch with a blanket wrapped around her, smiling down at her phone. She wasn't texting. She was on a video call, and even from that distance, Jackson could hear it. A male voice saying, "Morning, beautiful." Riley laughed. "You're such a flirt, Liam. I'm not even wearing makeup." Jackson didn't know how long he stood there, his heart pounding like a war drum. She hadn't cheated. Not yet. But there was something so intimate about that call. The way her voice softened. The way she twirled her hair. The way she forgot her husband was just a room away. After that morning, Jackson couldn't shake the image of Riley smiling at her phone. The name Liam echoed in his head constantly. In the shower, at work, even in his dreams. He wasn't the jealous type. At least, he didn't think he was. But now? Now he felt like a stranger in his own life. Riley, on the other hand, acted as if nothing had changed. She kissed him goodbye every morning, cooked his favorite meals, laughed at his jokes, but it all felt forced now, like she was performing a role, not living their life. Her phone was always on silent, face down locked, and she never left it unattended anymore, not even when going to the bathroom. One evening, when she went out to grab groceries, Jackson did something he swore he'd never do. He opened her laptop. She wasn't tech-savvy. She used the same password for everything. The name of their dog, Scout. Once inside, his heart pounded as he clicked open her email. Most were receipts and junk, until one folder caught his eye. Saved drafts. There was only one email inside. No recipient. No subject. Just a few lines. "I wish I could be with you without hurting anyone. You make me feel alive again. Sometimes I forget I'm married." He stared at the screen for a long time, reading the lines over and over. She hadn't sent it, but she'd written it. That was enough. It wasn't just harmless flirting anymore. This was emotional infidelity, at the very least, and yet, a part of him, the part still deeply in love with the woman he married, whispered that maybe this was just a phase. Maybe she was confused. Maybe, if he fought for her, he could win her back. That night, he held her closer in bed, kissed her forehead, whispered that he loved her. Riley stirred, half asleep, and murmured, "Love you too, Liam." Jackson went cold. She didn't notice. She just drifted back to sleep, leaving him wide awake, staring at the ceiling. His heart didn't just break. It shattered into 1,000 pieces, and for the first time, he didn't know if it could ever be whole again. The next morning, Jackson felt like a ghost moving through his own home. Riley cheerfully asked if he wanted waffles or eggs, completely unaware of the storm swirling inside him. He chose silence, just coffee. He couldn't even look her in the eye. All he could hear was that whisper, "Love you too, Liam." He called in sick to work, something he rarely ever did. The truth was, he couldn't focus, couldn't breathe without wanting to scream. He needed answers, cold, hard truth. Not just feelings, not suspicions, evidence. He knew Riley kept her old iPhone in the drawer by her nightstand. It hadn't been used in months, maybe longer, but if she'd synced her messages or iCloud, there was a chance, a slim one, but Jackson clung to it like a lifeline. He waited until she left for her yoga class, which, he now realized, she'd only started a few weeks ago. Right around the time the distance between them began, right around the time Liam appeared. Heart pounding, he retrieved the phone. It still turned on same passcode, Scout 2020. She really hadn't changed much. Inside her iMessages, there wasn't much at first. Old chats with her mom, friends, shopping deliveries. Then he noticed a contact saved only as L, no profile photo, just an initial, and then came the messages. L, miss your voice already. You looked stunning this morning. Riley, you're just saying that I barely had time to brush my hair. L, I don't care. You glow even when you're tired. I swear. I could stare at you forever. Jackson's fingers trembled. The timestamps matched the mornings when she claimed she was meeting Becky for brunch or going to Target. He scrolled further. Riley, wish I could crawl into your bed and just stay there forever. L, you will one day just say the word. One message had a picture. Jackson's blood ran cold. It was a selfie. Riley in their guest bathroom mirror, wearing a tight black tank top. Biting her lip, the caption read, for later face-blowing a kiss. That was his house, their house. His entire body shook with rage, betrayal, heartbreak. He dropped the phone on the bed and sat on the floor, his head in his hands. He had proof now, real, undeniable proof. She was cheating not emotionally, not in theory, in reality. And still, part of him hoped there was some explanation, some way out of this nightmare. But deep down, he knew things would never be the same. That evening, Riley returned home with a fresh energy in her step. She was glowing, talking fast about how great her yoga class had been, how she bumped into an old friend from college, how they should all have dinner sometime. Jackson nodded, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Inside, he was screaming. He had spent the last 6 hours reading and rereading those messages, wondering if the Liam she texted was the same Liam from the old friend group. The guy who used to joke about how marriage was a trap, that Liam had been a bartender with a smirk. No one trusted Jackson, hadn't seen him in years. Could it really be him? He thought about confronting her. Thought about just slamming the phone on the kitchen counter and asking, explain this. But the words never came, because for a few terrible minutes, Jackson watched Riley talk. Her eyes bright, her hands fluttering around as she described some ridiculous story about a woman who accidentally walked into the wrong yoga class. And in those moments, he saw the girl he had fallen in love with. The same Riley who used to drag him out of bed to dance in the living room. The Riley who cried at Pixar movies and always smelled like vanilla shampoo. So instead, he just said, sounds like a fun class. But that night, while Riley showered, Jackson stared at the ceiling and planned. He couldn't stay in limbo much longer. Pretending everything was fine was tearing him apart. If he confronted her too early, she might lie, deny, twist it. But if he waited too long, she might leave first. Run off with Liam and take half of what they'd built. He needed more. Not just texts. Something undeniable. Something she couldn't wiggle her way out of. He needed to see them together. The next day, he called in sick again. This time with a plan. The following morning, Jackson parked his car 2 blocks away from Riley's yoga studio. He didn't know what he was really expecting to find. Maybe she was telling the truth. Maybe Liam was just a name in a phone. Maybe there was nothing there, but deep down, his gut knew better. That buzzing anxiety in his chest hadn't let up for days. He had brought his DSLR camera with the long lens. Something he'd once used for casual photography, now twisted into a tool for truth. He felt ashamed even thinking about spying on the woman he loved. But his mind wouldn't rest until he saw something real. At 9:13 a.m. Riley exited the studio in her peach-colored leggings and loose gray hoodie. She wasn't alone. Walking beside her was a tall man with a shaved head and a confident gait. Liam. It was him. The same Liam from their college days. The one Jackson had never liked. The one Riley had once called a walking red flag with good cologne. They laughed at something he whispered, their arms brushing casually. Then Liam did something Jackson hadn't expected. He leaned in, kissed Riley on the cheek, and she didn't flinch, she didn't recoil, didn't step back, didn't look around nervously. She smiled. She touched his arm, and then she walked with him toward a nearby cafe as if nothing was wrong. Jackson snapped 3 photos from the car before lowering the camera, his hands shaking. It wasn't proof of an affair. Not yet, but it was something, enough to confirm that this wasn't just a few flirty texts. It was real, physical, Casual. Comfortable. He drove home on autopilot, his mind numb. All the memories of her late arrivals, the sudden interest in fitness, the random mood swings. They clicked into place like cursed puzzle pieces. She was cheating, but he still didn't confront her that night. Instead, he pretended everything was normal, kissed her forehead, asked about her day, nodded while she recited some nonsense about a new pose she had finally mastered. And all the while, the betrayal burned silently behind his eyes. He knew what he had to do now. No more guessing. He needed undeniable proof, and he was willing to go as far as it took to get it. The next evening, as Riley was in the shower, Jackson sat on the edge of their bed holding her phone in his hands. His palms were sweaty, his heartbeat chaotic, but his mind was eerily clear. He knew it was wrong to snoop. He hated the idea of becoming that guy. Insecure, paranoid, invading someone's privacy. But the doubt was louder than his morals. The phone wasn't locked. Riley had changed the password a week ago but must have forgotten to re-enable the screen lock after an update. A stroke of cruel fate or unconscious carelessness. Either way, it was open now. He scrolled quickly, navigating to the messages. There it was, Liam, with a red heart emoji next to the name. His fingers trembled, but he tapped the thread. What he saw made his vision blur. You smell like heaven. I could stay wrapped in you forever next time. Let's skip coffee and go straight to dessert. In the days that followed, Jackson became a ghost in his own life. Present but not really there. He woke up beside Riley each morning, brewed coffee for her, kissed her forehead like always. But something inside him was missing. He was watching her through a cracked lens now, every movement filtered through the knowledge of her betrayal. Riley, for her part, seemed oblivious, or maybe she was just a better actress than he gave her credit for. She still laughed at his jokes, sent him texts during the day with hearts and memes, asked him what he wanted for dinner. But Jackson could see through it now. Every smile looked performative. Every touch felt tainted. He started documenting everything. Time she left the house, what excuse she gave, what outfit she wore, how long she was gone. He took photos of receipts she left behind, noted dates and addresses. Jackson wasn't planning on confronting her just yet. He was gathering evidence for himself, for closure, maybe even for something bigger. One evening, Riley returned late again. She gave him the same rehearsed line. Her friend Amy had a family emergency, and they spent hours talking at her place. Jackson just nodded, eyes on the TV, pretending to be distracted by the baseball game inside. He was boiling. That night, after she fell asleep, Jackson opened her phone again. More texts, more intimacy. Liam telling her he missed her, that he couldn't stop thinking about her skin, about her laugh, and Riley responding with gifts of kisses, heart emojis, and plans for when they'd see each other next. There was a new message. You looked stunning in that dress today. Couldn't stop staring at you, Riley. It's for you? I wore it for you. Not him. Jackson stared at the screen, his chest tightening. Not him. That's what he had become in her mind. A placeholder, a shadow. But even worse than the texts was the voice note. He hadn't seen one before. His thumb hovered over it. Curiosity clawed at him like a demon. He played it. Riley's voice, soft and breathy, whispered, I dreamt of you last night. Woke up missing your hands on me. I can't wait for Sunday. Jackson's hands shook. He paused the audio, stared at the wall. Sunday. She told him she was going to visit her mom that day. He had even helped her pack an overnight bag. His own hands had folded her clothes for the man she was cheating with. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just sat there, the weight of it all pressing down on his chest like 1,000 pounds of concrete. There was a fire in him now, cold and focused. Jackson knew exactly what he needed to do next. He wouldn't beg. He wouldn't fight for her. He would let her fall on her own sword. You drive me crazy. Can't believe we waited this long. Jackson's throat tightened. His stomach churned. It got worse. Riley, I keep thinking about last night. You made me feel so alive. I missed that. Liam, next time, I want the whole night with you. No rushing. And then, a picture. Nothing explicit. Just Riley's hand in Liam's. Their fingers intertwined, lying on what looked like a hotel bed. Her engagement ring was off. Jackson's mind spun. He remembered that night. She told him she was attending a late yoga class and grabbing dinner with a friend afterward. She'd come home glowing, saying she was sore from stretching. Now he knew why. A sound from the bathroom snapped him back. The shower had turned off. He had maybe 30 seconds. He locked the phone and placed it exactly where it had been, charging on her nightstand. Then he moved to his side of the bed, forced his breathing to slow, and pretended to scroll on his own phone. Riley walked in, wrapped in a towel, humming softly. She kissed him on the cheek like nothing had changed, like she hadn't just gutted him from the inside out. Jackson didn't respond. He couldn't. He was frozen in place, emotionally paralyzed. Inside, something shifted. His love for her had not died, but it had cracked deeply, and from that crack, something darker had begun to grow. Resolve. He wouldn't confront her yet. He needed time. He needed a plan, and he needed her to never see it coming. Sunday arrived with the kind of overcast gray sky that made everything feel heavier. Riley woke up early, took a long shower, and spent almost an hour getting ready. Jackson pretended to still be asleep. His back turned to her as she slipped into the hallway. He listened to the sounds of her hairdryer, her makeup bag clinking, her quiet humming. She was cheerful, too cheerful. She kissed his cheek and whispered, "I'll be back tomorrow afternoon. Give your mom a call. Okay?" She asked about you yesterday. He nodded, eyes still closed, and murmured, "Yeah, will do." The front door clicked shut behind her, and with it, something inside Jackson snapped into clarity. He got up immediately, threw on a hoodie, and opened the drawer where he had placed a small tracking device he'd bought online 2 nights ago. It was the size of a coin, sleek and black. He'd slipped it into the lining of Riley's overnight bag when she wasn't looking. Now he opened the tracking app on his phone. She wasn't heading north toward her mom's suburb. She was driving west, straight toward Liam's apartment. Jackson's breath was steady, controlled. This wasn't about catching her anymore. He already had everything he needed. This was about witnessing it, about taking back the narrative, about ensuring she couldn't lie her way out of it anymore. He had 2 GoPros, one mounted in his car and the other tucked into the strap of his messenger bag. He hit record on both. By the time he reached Liam's neighborhood, Riley's car was parked right outside the building. Jackson sat in his car across the street, heart pounding, watching through the windshield like a man studying a crime scene. 20 minutes later, he saw them. Riley came out onto Liam's balcony in a white robe, holding a coffee mug, laughing at something he said behind her. Liam appeared next to her shirtless, leaned in, kissed her temple. She didn't flinch. She didn't hesitate. She belonged to someone else now, and she was okay with it. Jackson grabbed his phone and snapped several photos through his zoom lens. Not because he needed proof. He already had the texts, the voice note, everything. But because he wanted to freeze this moment, burn it into memory. His phone buzzed. It was a message from Riley. "Just got to Mom's. She's making pancakes. Love you." He read it, blinked, and smiled. She was still lying, still pretending. She had no idea that he was parked just down the street, watching her pretend life unravel in real time. He didn't reply. Instead, he opened a new email and began uploading everything he had. Photos, screen recordings, voice notes, even the GPS trail from the tracker. He sent it to himself with the subject, "Just in case," because the moment of confrontation was near. But Jackson wanted to make sure that when the mask came off, Riley would have nothing left to hide behind. Jackson waited until the next afternoon. He didn't sleep much that night instead. He replayed the scene on Liam's balcony over and over in his head. Riley's laugh, the robe, the casual way she leaned into Liam's touch, as if the last 5 years with Jackson had never happened. At 3:07 p.m. on Monday, he heard the familiar jingle of keys outside the front door. Riley walked in, kicking off her shoes and tossing her bag onto the couch. "Babe, I'm home," she called out, cheerful, like nothing had happened. "Mom sends her love. She packed us some banana bread." Jackson stepped out of the bedroom, calm, composed. "How was your weekend?" he asked, keeping his tone light. Riley blinked, just slightly off guard, but smiled quickly. "Good. You know, family stuff. We went to that farmer's market again." Mom bought way too many peaches. She giggled softly, like she always did when she was lying. He nodded. Right? That's weird though. Riley tilted her head. What's weird? Jackson walked to the kitchen and pulled something from the drawer. Her GPS-tracked route printed out, because according to this, you never made it to your mom's. You went to Liam's place. Spent the night, had coffee on his balcony in your white robe. The color drained from Riley's face like someone had flipped a switch. Her mouth opened, then shut. Wah! What are you talking about? Are you seriously tracking me now? You lied, Jackson said flatly, ignoring her deflection. Again, after everything. And I watched you. I was there. Riley's lips trembled. Jackson, it's not what you think. No, he snapped, but his voice remained eerily even. It's exactly what I think and worse, because you had the audacity to lie straight to my face while it was still happening. She took a shaky step toward him, her voice cracking. Please, let me explain. I made a mistake. You didn't make a mistake. Jackson cut her off. You made a series of decisions, deliberate ones. You chose to text me fake updates while being in another man's bed. Silence settled between them like a thundercloud. Tears welled up in Riley's eyes. But Jackson didn't move. He didn't soften. He couldn't. I loved you, he said, almost to himself. I built a life around you, trusted you. And now, I see you for who you really are. She collapsed onto the couch, hands in her hair, sobbing. I didn't mean for it to go that far. I was confused. I felt neglected and Liam he listened. You could have told me, Jackson replied. We could have worked on it. But instead, you chose betrayal and I'm done. He walked toward the hallway, stopping just once. I suggest you start packing. Then he disappeared behind the door, leaving Riley alone with the sound of her own regret. 3 days had passed since Jackson confronted Riley. The apartment they once called home was now half empty, her side of the closet barren, photos missing from the shelves, and the faint scent of her perfume slowly fading from the sheets. Riley had packed quietly, without begging or screaming. The look in Jackson's eyes had told her there was no coming back. Jackson hadn't cried. Not when she left. Not when he found the box of saved love notes she'd once written him, buried under her sweaters. But he felt something heavier. A hollow ache, like the sound of an empty house where laughter used to live. He stayed home from work that Friday. Not out of grief, but clarity. He needed time to feel everything. The betrayal, the loss, the freedom. Riley, meanwhile, was staying at her sister's place. She tried reaching out. Once, a text that read, I know I don't deserve it, but I hope someday you'll forgive me. Jackson didn't reply. Instead, he went for a long walk through the city. The same city where he and Riley used to get coffee on Sunday mornings, where they'd kissed under the park lights, where they made promises. Everything felt the same and completely different all at once. On the way back, he passed by Liam's building for a second. He considered going up there, confronting him face to face. But then, he didn't. What would be the point? Liam didn't destroy his life. Riley did. And she'd already done enough damage. That night, Jackson sat down at his desk and pulled out an old notebook, the one where he used to sketch floor plans and write out future dreams. He flipped to a blank page and simply wrote, Start again. It wasn't dramatic. There was no sudden epiphany, no movie moment, just the quiet knowledge that he had survived the worst of it. The lies, the betrayal, the heartbreak, and he was still standing. As for Riley, she would have to live with the consequences, with the memory of a man who gave her everything, and whom she threw away. The echo of her choices would follow her far longer than Jackson's silence ever could.